At AIA Australia, we're making healthy living easier by incentivising your clients with rewards, like discounts on their gym memberships, eligible flights, and insurance premiums with AIA Vitality. It's no wonder that we've reduced client lapse rates by 50% and helped grow client engagement. To find out more, contact your AIA CDM today.
Horizons, which sort of transitions, people that don't really know a lot about advice into people that know a little bit more than not a lot. And something that Jade and I was speaking about a little while ago over some beers was his unique take and experiences on outsourcing. And so that's something that a lot of people have done. I myself have hired sort of several people at different capacities without a lot of success. I know Ben's done it. I know a lot of people have done it. I know a lot of people who have run companies out of outsourcing. Jade had some pretty unique insight. So, so mate, I just want to get, before we get to all that, you're like an ex-rock star. Can you talk a second about that?
Oh, geez, this is my life, well and truly before finance. But yeah, in my, early 20s, I spent a lot of time as a touring musician, playing bass in an indie rock band and living the dream. It was great, carefree, touring the eastern states. Yeah, it was fantastic. Seems a world away from where we are today.
Yes, indeed. Now, and then from there, you jumped into direct insurance with AMP. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I always knew I was going to end up back in the finance world, and so I got my foot in the door whilst I was finishing some study with AMP, working out of their direct office. So we were dealing with clients directly over the phone with self-serve insurance, superannuation, and even to some degree TTR. I don't know how they got away with doing that, but so I did that for about about 18 months or so before I moved over to Horizons, where we met, which was probably the best thing I could have done, I think, for my career at that stage.
Yeah, it was very helpful. I can definitely back that up. So after we spent a year in Horizons, you moved down to Adelaide to essentially sort of take over your dad's successful and you call it long-standing business.
Yes.
And so as a part of your goal of bringing your advice practice into the 21st century, or however you want to put this new world of advice, a part of that has been outsourcing. Can you talk us a little bit about some of the things that you're trying to bring in that was different, say, from your dad's strategy, and then we'll get into how the outsourcing fits in.
Okay, well, yeah, so after I left Horizons, I moved, obviously, as you said, back to Adelaide, and I spent a few years sort of doing the same kind of work as we were doing in Horizons, working with sort of more low-touch clients, building the book of business. 2 years ago, I bought the business. So my father had it for 30-odd years. It had been, quite heavily involved with a lot of corporate super, areas like that, a lot of personal investment clients. He had to sell that back to Hillross, and I purchased the majority of the book back, but mainly focusing on our full service clients that we had strong relationships with, and also, a number of our insurance clients, but we sort of carved off the corporate super part of the business at that stage. And yeah, I guess so that was nearly 2 years ago now, and it's been quite a journey from being an employed advisor into being somebody responsible for running staff, improving business efficiencies, the processes that we're using. So I guess, a business that's been around for 30 years is quite set in its ways with how it has historically done things. Yeah. I did have some challenges with some long-standing staff that were, whilst they were very good at what they did, weren't necessarily too impressed with wanting to learn new ways of doing things or adjust what they were doing, especially at the instructions of a young buck that's just come into the business. So that had its own unique challenges in itself. But so I guess, we're all in the same boat. We're all trying to get more efficiencies for the same time in the office, do more with what we've got. I guess for me, at the same time that I took over the business, I was in the fortunate position that also had a relationship with quite an innovative accounting group here in Adelaide, and we formed a joint venture business, I guess, in light of some of the changes that were coming about with the accountants providing financial advice to have an integrated in-house offering for them.
Yep.
And fortunately for me, they already had several forays into the offshoring world, and they'd done quite a bit of trial and error in their own right, but had settled on a model that was working really well for them. So fortunately for me, I didn't have to sort of learn too many of the pitfalls on my own time, and was able to get into something that was working quite well from the get-go. So they had trialled staff over in India. And had spent, a good few years trying to get that system up and running. I think there was quite a few cultural issues that they did have with just the differences between India and Australia that had posed some challenges. And for them, they'd found that I guess the Philippines, having such a good grasp of English and sort of a little bit more of a, for lack of a better word, westernised background, was a really good fit. So I've just simply leveraged off what they were doing well and tried to apply it to my own business. And before sort of taking the plunge to do it, because it is a reasonable mindset shift to think, all right, well, traditionally I've always just had people in my office where I can walk over to them and say good day and ask them to come back to me on some things. There's somebody who I don't know who is not in my office. So I went over with Chris, who's one of the directors of the accounting business, to see how it all worked firsthand. I think that's really important. So we went over to Manila, visited the offices, met with the guys that run the whole show over there to get an understanding of what their recruitment process is like. Importantly, and this is was one of the big things for me, I needed to feel comfortable that the security and the data security over there was going to be up to scratch before I'd feel comfortable with somebody else having access to our client info.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so after visiting there and being quite impressed with how their offices were run, and the screening that they put their staff through, which includes having a variety of Australian recognised qualifications as well. So these aren't the people we're dealing with. They're not people who don't know what a super fund is, or they're the guys that at least as a bare minimum got RG 146 compliance.
Yeah, right.
And so I started with one staff member, Evelyn, and at the moment we've only got two there at the moment. But I think that is going to be definitely an area of growth for our business, which actually, strangely enough, allows us to have the capacity to employ more people here in Australia as well. So it hasn't sort of been a case of building a team offshore at the expense of jobs and staff here in Australia. The two are not mutually exclusive. They've allowed us to kind of build the capacity by using people offshore, and then because of that extra capacity, we can now employ more people locally as well. So I find it a real win-win.
Awesome. So I just want to dive into that functionality. So you flew over, you met with the team. Was that the limit of it, or was there any other relationship building?
Well, I guess, as I was saying, our situation was a bit different in that, so Chris and we, who are the two directors of the accounting group, they have 10 staff there already. So, and they had been running that for about 18 months or so before I got involved. Right. So it was just, at that stage, it was more for me, let's have a look at what's working really well for them. Why is that different from what they've done previously? I trust the other directors, their input. They're both quite savvy guys in their own right. So we got to know how do you set it up? What from a compliance point of view, what do we need to consider to make sure that we're meeting all of our compliance obligations? And that extends to not only just the data security, but how you're communicating with your staff in other countries. So, for example, any client information is stored locally on our server. and they all have remote access to our server, but it has to go through Australia. So we're not emailing back and forth any client documents that could get intercepted. Anything relating to client info is still stored on our servers back in Australia, and they just have access to it. So it was just fine-tuning how are we going to set everything up so that we're meeting all of our compliance obligations from day one, essentially.
And how did you train your staff?
Okay, well, I guess for me, Evelyn, who I employed, the first interview process, so I had a Skype interview that the guys in Manila arranged for me. So we had five candidates or so to choose from to start with, of varying ages and experiences. And for my first staff member, I just went for the person who was the most experienced in dealing with the variety of things that we might need to use. So, Evelyn, her background was that she'd been working for Western banks in the Philippines for a very long time, doing a lot of economic reports for them, client communication. So and as well as her immediate role prior to working with me was as a paraplanner over there as well. So she was familiar with Xplan, even though we didn't use that in our office, so we don't at the moment.
Sure.
She was familiar with the types of software we'd be using, the format for statements of advice, and so when I settled that she was the one, we gave them the nod. So the way that it kind of works in our arrangement is that we deal directly with the group in the Philippines. The group that we choose to use are called EMAPTA. They're run by an Australian guy, Tim Vorbach, over there. Mm-hmm. So we deal with them. They find the staff. We pay them the fee for the staff salaries, but technically they're employed in the Philippines by EMAPTA.
Right.
What was the name of that?
Sorry?
What was the name of that, Jay?
The value in that? The name, EMAPTA, EMAPTA, EMAPTA.
And what kind of work do you get them to do?
Well, so initially there was more compliance issues from our point of view for doing paraplanning and more detailed work.
Right.
So Evelyn has just been essentially a client services officer. Okay. So she will do, for some, I'll have a meeting with a client and they want a withdrawal. I'll just jump on Skype Evelyn. Hey, this client needs this money out by X time. Can you please arrange that to happen and log the file notes? And they take care of it all. So it's essentially like having a virtual assistant or a client services officer. If we need portfolio rebalances, she sends us the work to check before she pushes the buttons, but then she'll implement some of those changes. So a lot of the back-end time-consuming things, but still areas that carry a large amount of trust as well.
Definitely. Yeah, so she's got access to the platforms and logins and everything like that. Okay.
Yeah, she does. And, I wouldn't have done that if I wasn't very comfortable with the integrity of the people that they were hiring.
So that's why you flew over, just to make sure. Yeah. Okay, so it was less about, taking a stab in the dark, so to speak, and more about using a team that was... already experienced in what we wanted to do, essentially. Yeah. Okay.
But then I had to satisfy myself that I was comfortable with the quality of work that they do. And look, it's not something that it's perfect from day one. Yep. What we've done since I hired Evelyn, I go over each year around Christmas time. We take essentially we treat the staff, or Chris and the other directors of the accounting group, our teams are in the same little office space, so they all know each other, which is great also from an efficiency point of view, because if I need to know things about our mutual clients, they can just talk to each other and just sort it out in the one office, which is fantastic. Basically no cost for the accounting group either. So they don't have their full accountants sitting there tracking down, self-managed fund statements or whatever the case is. Yeah. But so we fly over there each year and do ongoing training. But what I found was really good. I didn't know we could actually do this at the time that I hired Evelyn, but EMAPTA also organise visas for her to come over to Australia and work in our office for a period of time. So we flew Evelyn over after she'd been with us for about 6 or 7 months, and she spent 6 weeks working from our office she's the same as any of her other staff. She just happens to be located in a different country.
Wow, that's I've never heard of that happening before. So that's very unique. So she came over and enjoyed sort of getting to know everyone, but also you were able to instill in her not only the values, but you know the systems and how you do work, rather than everything being over Skype. And he works in an office with a bunch of other people that are associated with your business. So it's really like a secondary office space it's an extension of your office, rather than someone being working for you on the other side of the world.
Yeah, we didn't want it to feel like a little somebody isolated on the other side of the world who's just sort of tapping into what we're doing. They are a valued part of our team and every bit as important as any one of our other staff members. So I think where some people can go wrong when you're dealing with offshore staff is that they just think they're going to be self-sufficient, ready to roll from day one. Here you go, here's the work, start doing it. But I think there really needs to be a big focus on context and why, rather than just, they're clever enough to, they're well educated in Australian financial services areas, but if they don't understand why this certain thing that they're doing is important or how that's relevant to other things that you might be doing for them, it really can fall down. So that's why I think it's really important to from a team cohesion point of view, to have Evelyn come over periodically, work from our office. It's a bit of a team building thing as well, but then she can see how what she's doing how her cog in the wheel fits in with everything else that we're doing and why it's important. And that's I think a really big point of difference, I think, for us.
Yeah. And Jade, if I can just jump in for a sec, how do you guys? Because you mentioned security a couple of times. How do you manage security in that office, and what sort of procedures do you use to ensure that that level of security that you want to maintain?
Okay, so we've got our dedicated IT team here in Adelaide that we work with, who actually works very closely with the IT security team in the Philippines at Amapta. They, as you could imagine, have extremely rigorous processes that they have to apply to, because the last thing they're going to want is any form of data security issue, because it would just essentially destroy all trust in that operation. So they're extremely tight on it from their end. So we've got a number of different firewalls and various email screening systems that we use, which can sometimes be frustrating because sometimes you get things that you don't want to have caught up in the firewall and get stuck there. But it's not the kind of area you want to take chances with. But so we just make sure that we have an office-wide policy that there's no emails or other forms of communication with client-sensitive info. It's all stored locally. The only way for the people for our staff in Manila, for Evelyn and now Oliver, to access that info is through our server. And everything is monitored through our email system as well to see who's sending what, so we can keep tabs on if any staff members have breached that or not. But we're very tight on that. That's extremely important.
So does it actually restrict them from being able to send sensitive information somewhere else, or is it just that everything is tracked and then you can then audit what's actually been happening?
Look, I'm not sure offhand whether it actually physically stops the sending. I believe that on the Philippine side that they've only got certain emails that certain email addresses that are able to send to from their end. But as I say, all of our client stuff isn't really dealt with on emails through our server anyway. But yeah, all of their emails and communication is very closely monitored on their end. We're going to the point of where to get into that building, you've got to go through a metal detector. You can't bring in a mobile phone, USB drives. The computers don't have USB drives. It's about 10 times the level of security of any financial services office you find here in Australia. But it really has to be for them, because they just can't afford any reputational damage by having any issues like that. So I fully understand and support it.
Okay. That makes sense. I think that's something that a lot of people look at, when they think about this offshoring, but it can put a lot of people off, because obviously with the sort of information that we have access to, that could get up to a fair bit of mischief. But it sounds like
I think also just reviewing your own, and this is what we're sort of reviewing this at the moment ourselves, just making sure that your professional indemnity insurance cover is up to scratch, and that there is third-party PI cover in place with the providers you deal with. I know that we're working with Matt to review that at the moment, and as well as our own. So yeah, I wouldn't be, if I wasn't comfortable with the recruitment process and the integrity and the security over there, I just wouldn't do it. But I think from my observations and the previous experience from the accounting group that have, they've got hundreds and hundreds of clients that are using services over there, there's been zero issues for us.
All right. Well, mate, you've sort of dobbed us in because Jackie, who works for us over in the Philippines, texting me saying, hey, wink, wink, yeah, you can send me to Australia for Christmas. So cheers for that, buddy.
Yeah, you're welcome, you're welcome. Or more importantly, Clay, you can have a nice little tax-deductible business trip over to the Philippines. That's all right.
Touche. Okay, well, we've probably got another 9 minutes up our sleeve. I know you're very busy, Jade. You got a meeting to go into. So I guess at this stage we'd like to maybe take some questions from the group. We've got one
sure.
from Mark. And does Evelyn work for you exclusively full time, or does she serve other firms?
She's exclusively our staff member full time.
Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't like to deal with staff members working for multiple practices. I think I need the full attention of that person with our clients and our business. So that's really important for us.
And Jay, do you do the full management of Evelyn, or is there a management team in the office over there that provides some basic support as well?
Yes, they do. They've got a tiered management structure over there. So there's somebody that reports to me on, if she's had a sick day, or if there's, issues with running a fire drill in the office, or whatever the case may be. We have regular performance reporting. They request from us to make sure that we're happy with the calibre of the work that's being produced and what's happening over there, so they can improve their training and processes as well. So yeah, I usually, for anything, I guess, management related, I've got a dedicated person over there that I deal with who oversees my staff.
Sure. Okay. And how do you communicate typically on a, day-to-day basis when you're working with the staff? Do you use any particular technology, or, how do you run that?
We use Skype quite a bit. I mean, I have to admit, I'm not probably the most tech-savvy person out there, but I find Skype works really well for us. So we have quite frequently have Monday morning meetings where we look at what's on the go in the office for the coming week. And so we'll patch our staff in the Philippines to that so they can participate. And again, it's all about feeling included in the team and the business that they're working in. So they're invested in what they're doing in our business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just got a follow-up question from Mark here as well, just asking about the cost of the service.
Well, I guess the cost will vary depending on what type of work you want that person to be able to do, their level of experience and number of years doing that kind of role. I think from memory, our full-time staff over there probably costs us somewhere in the vicinity of 33 to 35,000 Aussie dollars per year, right? In that order, but it will vary. I've heard of other people paying 25, 27,000 for their staff. It just depends on the organisation and the previous experience, I'd suggest.
Yeah, I'd suggest probably a lot of that would be the office that they're in, and all the safety measures, the management that's involved. Could be being as sensitive as the data is.
Yeah, they've got a lot of overheads. Like they've run there's a lot of Australian and other country businesses operating from Amapta. I can only speak from experience of the group that we're using. So they do have a lot of overheads. So they've got their set fee to provide the recruitment, the management of your staff, all of the facilities. if there's extra things that they need, like we might need a computer upgrade or a new printer or whatever, they tend to just charge that at cost price to us on our invoices, not trying to mark that up. We can opt to pay in Aussie dollars or US dollars, so I tend to pay in US dollars depending on the exchange rate, because they will probably have a slight margin in there, so I choose to do it that way.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And Jade, did you have any? Did you make any mistakes when you first got started? Like, if you were going back again, is there anything that stands out that you would do differently or better to make it work easier if you were to start this again?
Well, I guess I don't think there's too much that I'd change at this stage. I mean, we're only still 18 months in, so we're still learning and refining what we're doing as well. I won't profess to be, look, I'm not the oracle of offshore staffing and know it all, but I was in the fortunate position of being able to leverage off other people that had already had some, trial and error with other arrangements. So I was able to sort of get off to start using that service on the right foot, I think. So I think as long as you sort of look at what you're required to do from your licensee compliance point of view, engage the relevant stakeholders, and essentially ensure your compliance is tight and that you've got good staff members, you're happy with the recruiting, and you're clear on what you want them to do. I think it can be a really successful recipe for helping to grow the capacity of your business, with hopefully not overburdening your practice with added cost to a large extent.
Sure. And if someone was thinking about going down this path, would you say that there's anything that they need to do, apart from what you've just mentioned, of course, but
I'd get over there. Get over there and see it for yourself. Be satisfied that you understand the way that it works over there, because it is different to Australia, and that you're comfortable with the people running any of the outsourcing or offshoring arrangements that you're considering. Know them, know who you need to go to if there's any issues. But importantly, I would really encourage you to get over there, see how it all works for yourself. That was a real eye-opener for me. And as I said, if I wasn't comfortable with it when I went there, I would definitely not have done it. But I'm very glad that I did.
Awesome, man. And just to wrap up, just got one quick question here from Leon.
Yeah.
Is there disclosure issues? You got to tell your clients that things are being outsourced, or in the
we do that on our client acknowledgement forms, and it's in our FSCG. Okay. So we make sure that, and I let them know that we have got staff that are operating from Manila, and that they're responsible for implementing some of the work we do, and we'll have access to the info, but they're part of our team. I haven't had anyone have any issues with it. Yep.
Okay, cool. Well, mate, thank you very, 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 very much for your time, brother. We'll jam out as us former rock stars generally on the weekend in our underwear. Tonight, for everyone, we have the XY social event on CBD in Melbourne. Thank you very much to Midwinter and Centuria for that. And we will see you here again, 12 o'clock Sydney time next week on Thursday. And have a really good week.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.